What is your most controversial opinion? It seems that the most controversial opinions are going to be downvoted to the bottom, and the least controversial will end up at the top. Sort by controversial instead of top. That if we would have done nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, after 9/11, just written it off as an expense and simply rebuilt the Twin Towers in a mindless, soulless enterprise, then we would be better off. I think the message that these aren't people, they are contractors, which is how the big shots really think about us, was broadcast to the terrorists, they would have realized there is no way to win, or even get revenge. Also, we'd be better off financially. When you think about it, it actually makes more sense fiscally to accept terrorism as a happenstance possibility, almost an insurance liability to add to an expense report, than to actively fight it. It can be completely ignored with little problem, but they'll get nukes, some people shout. I suppose there's a legitimate concern here, but I don't see it as very likely. Came here to say this. My most controversial opinion is that when you get past the lives lost and the material damage, 9/11 was no big deal. It wasn't worth 2 wars, and it was certainly a hugely missed opportunity to rally the world for peace. That there should be no government licensing of marriage. I think economic domestic partnerships should be something that you can register, but I think that anyone should be able to enter into such an arrangement. It should be set up so that the earners adults in a household can register as an economic unit if they live together and run a household together. This could be a married couple or a mother and daughter, or 2 friends or a polygamous family or whatever. If you are a household, share income and residence, then you should be able to file taxes, sign leases, get credit cards, open bank accounts and go about the business of life the same way that married people are able to do now. I don't think that the government has any business legislating romance or family. I've always thought along similar lines, but I never actually thought about extending it to things like mother-daughter, friends, etc. I think that is a fantastic idea. It would actually open up so many more ways of living with family, and even extend to helping different cultural residents live more in line with how they like. That the drinking age and driving age should be swapped. Get the drinking out of the way early before you have added danger of getting behind the wheel. 16 to drink, 18 to drive. I think that's what they do in Germany. We spend entirely too much money on special education. It makes 0 sense to spend the majority of the money on those least likely to contribute to society. +1 for actually posting something even remotely controversial. I've spoken with people from all over the country, and believe that saying everyone should vote probably isn't the best idea. Blood is not thicker than water. A true family is people you love and want to be around, not those people you have to see once a year for no other reason than you share some ancestor. Besides, we all share ancestors. Pets are animals and shouldn't be subjected to insane surgeries and recoveries as much as they are when they are already old. Also, kids need to be ignored sometimes so they can learn to be creative on their own. The developed world should leave Africa the frick alone. All of the donations, food, clothing, money etc. stifle any attempt at creating a workable economy. Kids need to lose. They need to fail. They need to get hurt. And they need to learn how to handle it on their own. An inflated self-esteem is just as dangerous if not more so than a low self-esteem. When a kid gets the idea into his or her head that they're amazing at everything, they tend to do 2 things. Quit working so hard at getting better, and respond with anger and excuses to failure rather than critical thought and reasonable response. Getting hurt is an important thing to learn about. Learning the difference between what's going to give you a serious injury and what's going to just make you a little uncomfortable for a while makes you less likely to get serious injuries. Kids that get hurt a lot when they're young grow up to be practically invincible, because they learn how to do what they want to do without getting injured. Also, being too hygienic is dangerous. Your kids need to get filthy, they need to get sick, and they need to do it often. The more of that type of damage they go through while young, the better off they will be when they're older. TLDR. Kids are far more resilient than people seem to want to admit. If you don't make them build on that, they'll get weaker. I'm in an open, 3-person relationship and it's awesome. Wonderful. Dreamlike and has been going for over 3 years. We live together and are planning on having kids in a year or two. When I tell people, I get treated like I'm dating a C-kid, so I have to keep the best thing about my life a secret most of the time. I do not understand how you all manage your emotions without having jealousy, but that's okay. I don't need to understand your relationship to know that you're happy. That the majority of people, myself included, are a lot closer to being sociopaths than we would like to believe. Obviously all of our actions are self-centered, but I see the majority of altruism as an innate instinct to be more accepted into society as a whole, perhaps to make more. I think faced with the choice of going to prison for life or murdering an innocent, most people would take the latter, and the bulk who say they wouldn't still would if someone else would kill the innocent person for them. I believe the guilt someone feels after wronging someone else is probably more related to perceived consequences to themselves than a legitimate concern for the feelings of others. My central point is this: so many people consider themselves good people, but I believe that if they were placed in more extreme situations, their morals would change. Race matters. I'm Black Asian, and have identified primarily with middle-class whites throughout my life, late 20s now. I can tell that people treat me differently in subtle ways, and I suspect that it's due to my race. A lot of people might agree that race does matter, but I think it's probably to a larger degree than they, or even I, suspect. People don't go to prison for punishment but are imprisoned as punishment. I believe the state must guarantee a prisoner's safety while incarcerated and is liable for any injuries that occur at the hands of other inmates. I honestly believe that the average Reddit user has a superiority complex, feels entitled to respect and praise for nothing, and severely overestimates their own intelligence. As a community, Reddit is often incredibly biased and often no more enlightened than the groups that it likes to make fun of. As a student of philosophy, my studies have led me to believe and support the notion that democracy is a really bad idea. It undermines the concept of expertise in a field, weights invalid and informed opinions equally, and, as Plato said, is an indulgence of unnecessary appetites. Don't get me wrong, democracy does a lot of good. I just think it's inherently stupid, and that we can do better. We can do better. I'm really curious what your solution is. Democracy is a terrible system, but the best one we have, Churchill, if I recall correctly. I'm not racist, but I'm sick of most of the college scholarships and extra governmental benefits require you to be of a minority. Just like they didn't choose to be black or Hispanic or whatever. I didn't choose to be white. When I pick up a scholarship application form and can only apply for 1/15 because the rest require me to be of a specific ethnicity, but there are no for whites only because it would be considered racist, I feel discriminated against. I've always wondered why all governmental benefits aren't based on your income bracket. The point of affirmative action is to allow poor families, which are mostly minorities, to still give their kids a decent education. We should be helping poor families because they are poor, not because they're a certain race. I think people should have to earn the right to procreate. Okay, here we go. I believe gangster rap music, starting with NWA in 1988, has completely destroyed all the progress MLK, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, and their ilk achieved in the late 50s into the 70s when many blacks wanted to be respected, work hard, become educated and contribute to society. Now, we have the start of a second generation of N, who use the word in nearly every sentence, no longer care about basic speaking skills, think the government owes them a favor because they're black, and dress like the most negative white nightmare stereotype they can muster. In fact, the influence of this gangster culture is so powerful it has infected imitation races where Mexicans, whose relatives likely risked their lives and learned a second language so their kids could have a better life, and whites who feel guilty because of their privilege, or because they are insecure enough to co-opt this ignorant culture of failure just to have friends. Bill Cosby is 100% right. Okay, let the charges of racism and downvotes commence. Didn't we do this like a week ago? Whatever, here it is. I don't hate fat people. It genuinely doesn't bother me. This is a very controversial opinion, especially on Reddit. Assisted suicide. When someone is a victim to an incurable disease, and they live their life in pain and suffering without any sort of medical way out, euthanasia for humans is a great idea. I think everyone who does something wrong has an excuse for it, even the worst criminals. They still need to be held responsible for their deeds, but I believe every crime is done because the criminal thinks that good will come from it. I really hope someday people will see most of those people need help and punishment instead of only punishment. Another way I once heard this described: no man goes into battle thinking that the god he worships supports the opposing side. I think abortions are terrible and they make me sick, but I'm glad that they're legal and think they should remain so. However, it seems that my second point always gets lost in the fray around people once I say I think abortions are bad. I think a government would be wise to reduce the number of abortions obtained through healthy sex education. This is how I summarize it: if you are pro-life, you should be supporting sex ed and contraceptives heavily. I believe that people should get a license before they can have kids. You need a license to do anything: drive, hunt, fish, cut hair. All useless acts, but giving birth isn't. There should be some sort of parenting test to not allow the retarded parents to have kids. Plus, this would solve the overpopulation issue. We need to seriously discuss population control now, because we are rapidly reaching the point at which the resources of our planet are insufficient to sustain the amount of human life. This will have disastrous consequences if we can't figure out a way to deal with it. Corporal punishment should be reserved for corrupt politicians. I think that fertility aids are immoral and selfish in a world with an exploding population and millions of unwanted children. If your body can't produce a child naturally, why spend $30,000 on treatments when that money could go to helping an actual child who is already born and in need of your help? Adoption is a perfectly viable option. I find lesbian couples always have an attractive member and an ugly one. Gay men are always equally attractive ugly as their partner. If you're a straight guy, this may just be that you're more discerning about women's appearance, because you're attracted to them, whereas most guys just look okay looking to you. Do not let retarded, mutated, disabled kids to be born. Terminate as soon as possible. Keeping them does not help parents nor society. I don't believe a person should be allowed to vote unless they can pass a high school level civics test and have at minimum a high school diploma. The right to vote would also have to be renewable. I'm curious why you see Iraq and Afghanistan as innocent countries. Saddam Hussein was a genocidal tyrant, and the Taliban government in Afghanistan gave shelter to international terrorists, not to mention their countless crimes against their own people in the name of fundamentalist Islam. I can't give sympathy when an occupying soldier is shot by a person defending their own nation. What if that defender is trying to replace American occupation with a theocratic government? Our debt-based currency system is a modern form of feudal serfdom. Elite bankers rule at the expense of the people, and we are too dumb to understand it. You need to keep in mind, however, the number of military personnel that join in order to get their college tuition paid. Not trying to be a douche, just saying that's why my friends have joined. Very few people join the military because they want to kill people. I believe in spanking children, not beating them, but I don't think there is anything wrong with spanking as a form of discipline. Campaign donations should only be allowed by individuals in a small capped amount. Corporate PAC donations or lobbying of any sort involving money, goods or services should be considered bribery and treason, punishable by death. Hundreds of thousands have likely died due to wars and policies resulting from legalized bribery. Many of our problems in the United States would be solved with this simple change. UFOs. I believe that people see weird crap in the sky, not all of which is weather balloons or high-tech aircraft or Venus or whatever, and I wish that the rest of the UFO community would make a much stronger effort to separate the wheat from the chaff, since most of it is just balloons and swamp gas, etc. Also, that the correct pluralization is UFOs and that people who put an apostrophe in there are probably lizard people. I'm what many would call a die-hard liberal, but I am completely for the right to bear arms. I believe everyone should learn basic gun safety and marksmanship. I love sleeveless tops too. Forced pregnancy, not allowing a woman to abort a pregnancy, is akin to 9-10 months of rape. I take this from a more loose definition that is anything being forced upon your reproductive organs that you do not consent to, not just intercourse. I can't think of anything more invasive and threatening to a woman than a forced pregnancy. Even with today's medical abilities, women die in childbirth and people tend to forget this. Not to mention what you have to go through mentally during that time and beyond. Is akin to 9-10 months of rape, or like 18 years. I believe that eugenics could be a great thing, and could seriously advance human evolution. It could wipe out diseases, birth healthy children, increase life expectancy along with the average person's strength and intelligence. Eugenics in the past have been used for terrible reasons, being used to justify wiping out or sterilizing races. But if we did it right, I believe that eugenics is what the human race needs right now. I can't summarize it in a few words, but women's liberation helped to create the economic climate wherein two full-time employed adults cannot live comfortably. The movement also helped to flood the marketplace with overpriced luxury beauty household items whose sole value was branding and the ability to cause jealousy. To be clear, this was not the movement's intention. A lot of this is due to corporate culture and advertising realizing the potential of, and pandering to, the female consumer in our capitalist society. Sometimes the use of force by the individual, as a solution for certain problems, is justified, holds merit, and is even preferable. I support the war and don't really give a frick about the politics. Oh, and I'm joining the Marines in a year, and want to be a sniper. Slavery has produced perfect athletes in almost 90% of African Americans. It's the great poetic justice of the century. Nothing says revenge like a Vince Lombardi trophy. Corporations are not legal entities and have no legal rights as individuals. Corporations' owners and shareholders are criminally responsible for crimes committed. Ecological impact should be included in the pricing of all goods, based on the cost of restoring all resources. Should be illegal to sell goods and services that do not take care of restoring the resources. GMO should be illegal. Pesticides that impact the water supplies should be illegal. Private entities owning water supplies should be illegal. Drinkable water seems to be the next big target for corporations, already happening in Africa, at the cost of thousands of people dying because they can't pay for the water coming from their own land. Profiting from healthcare should be illegal. Equal opportunity affirmative action is completely racist. When an employer tells you to put your race on your resume if you are a minority, they are discriminating against someone, and even if it is white men, that racism, the argument that they were dominated before, doesn't matter. To have equality you have to treat everyone the same. If you start treating one group better, it's not equality. For reference, I live in Canada. Many government offices do this, where they tell you to add your race to your application if you are a minority. Also, some employers blatantly hire females at a disproportionate rate in my field, CS. AskReddit even said in another thread he was trying to get his office 50% females. The problem with this being only 10-30% of CS graduates are females, meaning that you are hiring them at a greater rate based on gender. Same goes for the army firemen, where men and women have different expectations. Seriously, if you want to do something, no matter who you are, fat, skinny, black, white, male, female, the expectation should be the same. If you can or can't do it, that's fine, but don't ask for the bar to be lowered because you are special. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.